It's now time for the bottleneck audit. Okay, I love this one because there are things that probably are holding you back in your business that you're not aware of that we can easily get rid of. Okay, a bottleneck, it's essentially anything that currently is or will soon slow down the growth or the operations in your business. Okay, so let's identify them, then let's remove them, and don't worry, there's a formula. Okay, I've got a formula that I created for this because I do this about once a quarter in my business. So I'd love to do it with you right now to make sure we can get rid of any before we get too much further into the Free the Founder program. Okay, so first things first, we draw up, and you'll see a worksheet below. Again, I would grab that, but if you're a hardcore doer and you just want to get it done and you haven't printed it out, grab a piece of paper, draw this up. It's very simple. Okay, on the left-hand side, in the first column, we've got the bottlenecks. Right? What we need to do first is make a list of the top 5 bottlenecks that have been slowing your business down. Okay, only 5, no more than 5. We can't deal with more than that at once. What are the biggest? Maybe it's the fact that you've been avoiding doing sales calls. Maybe it's the fact that you can't seem to pump out the course quickly enough and you can't seem to finish the new program. Or maybe your Facebook ads aren't working and you're not getting enough leads from Facebook ads. Or maybe there's something that you just keep pushing to the bottom of the list that's really important and you've been meaning to do it forever and you still haven't done it, right? It's usually something on your list that's nagging you, that's been there for ages. Write it down. I want you to write down your top 5 bottlenecks in this first column, okay? In the second column, I want you just to write one sentence that's a summary of why that bottleneck's happening. Just one sentence. Like, why is a bottleneck occurring? Why is it so hard to get this thing done and ticked and sorted, right? So what is the bottleneck? Why is it happening? Now, once you've done that, we're going to look at how it's happening. This column is a really easy one. Okay, you can pause the video now if you want to take a moment to do the bottleneck and why it's happening. The how, basically, based on what you've written here under the why column, I want you to choose the how. It has to be one of 3 categories, essentially. Right? There's only one of 3 answers to how. It's really, really simple. So for each of these bottlenecks, you have to choose one of these 3. It's a bottleneck either because A, you don't have the skills, B, you don't have the interest, or C, you don't have the confidence. For each of these, what is it? Is it skills? Is it interest? Or is it confidence? Take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and literally write it down now. Is it skills? Is it interest? Or is it confidence for each of these 5? Now, the final step, once you've put in whether it's interest or skills or confidence, the final step is to figure out what we're going to do about it. This is also another really easy one because there's only a couple of options. Because here's the truth. Let me explain what your options are. Just depending on what you've put in this column will dictate what your options are. So if you wrote don't have the skills in this column, you've got 2 options to put into here. Either you've got to learn them or you've got to delegate it. That's it. If you don't have the skills, you've either got to commit to learning it, or if you don't have the skills and you don't want to, then you've got to delegate it. Someone else has to do that job. Really simple, right? If in this column here you've chosen don't have the interest beside any of these bottlenecks, the only thing that you're able to do is to delegate it. You must delegate it if you don't have the interest to learn how to do it yourself. And that's totally fine. We can admit it, but that's the only option. All right, so if we don't have the skills, your option is to either own it or to delegate it. If you don't have the interest, your only option is to delegate it. If you don't have the confidence, you got 2 options. You could own it and get a mindset coach, or you can delegate it out. Right? So you've got to figure out, am I going to own it and make a change? If I'm not, or if I've been proving to myself lately that it's probably not something that I have an interest in, that's okay, but you've got to choose to delegate it. Otherwise it'll never get done. Now there's one final option, and that is to defer it. There may be something in this bottleneck list that has been on your to-do list and that you've been feeling guilty for not completing or not getting right that you genuinely don't really need to do to grow a successful business. Maybe on there it's something like podcast. And you've been meaning to do a podcast for so long and you've been working on a podcast for so long and you still haven't launched that podcast. You know what? I'm here to tell you right now, you don't need a podcast to get to what we've got to, almost $40 million in turnover. Don't have a podcast. That's been something on my to-do list, but I'm not letting it become a bottleneck or something that I'm going to waste my time focusing on. I've deferred that in my business because you don't need that to make money. So if there's anything on that list that isn't mission critical to you being successful, I'm also cool with you just putting it out there and deferring it. Saying, you know what, I'm going to table that and come back to that later. I'm going to stop letting this be a bottleneck that's distracting me and slowing the business down. Okay, so it's now time to get to work. List out your bottlenecks, give yourself a quick one-sentence summary as to why they're occurring, and then we've got to decide, is this due to not having the interest, not having the skills, or not having the confidence? And then we make the decision, are we going to own it, delegate it, or defer it?